Hello, hello. This is Darren. Yeah, it's Monday again. A little bit later, maybe than normal. I am trying to get things to work, and they're not working very successfully, but that's okay. All right. Well, anyway, it looks like we are going live, and we will deal with all the things we need to deal with as they come up. Tonight, we are looking at Mark 1:35 through 39, looking at just a small little piece here as Jesus and the disciples continue in and around Capernaum. You remember that last time, the last text that we looked at was Jesus healing um, first Peter's mother, and then a number of folks at the house later on in the evening. And so, yeah, sorry, things are just going wonky over here on the end, but I'll get it right here in a second. Yeah. Anyway, so we move on, and this is I'm going to read from Joel Marcus again. I like how he highlights a couple things. And early in the morning, while it was still quite dark, he got up and went outside, and went away to a deserted place. And there he was praying. And Peter and those who were with him hunted him down, and they found him and said to him, "Everyone is looking for you." And he said to them, "Let's go elsewhere, into the neighboring towns, so that I might preach there also. For this is why I have come forward." And he came into their synagogues throughout the whole region of Galilee, preaching and casting out demons. So yeah, a quick little scene, and almost like really almost like a summary scene, more than anything else, with what's going on here. And but there are a couple things in it that I would like to bring out, and I hope that I'm not as frozen as I look. Oh, now the gee whiz! I tell you, it is never ending with some of this stuff. My camera seems to have gone down. Sorry about that. I'm going to pop it up here. Let's see about that. Let's see if, oh, close. All right. There we go. Sorry. Wow. It's always something. So anyway, yeah. So quick scene. Couple things to bring up. The first thing to notice right away is that Jesus has just done all of this incredible healing and working with um, with the poor and the disabled and all of this stuff. And then gets up early in the morning and goes out to by himself, goes out, and it says to a deserted place in our text. And the important thing to note is that what actually the word there is the same word that is translated wilderness in if you remember in the prologue, the word wilderness is used. The word wilderness is used 4 times in the prologue. First is introduced as in the quotations, talking about a voice crying out in the wilderness. And then, of course, it's mentioned twice when Jesus is sent out into the wilderness by the Spirit. So you have Jesus here in the earlier part of chapter 1 was taken out into the wilderness by the Holy Spirit, and here takes himself into the wilderness in order to pray. It says, and so I think we'll come back again to that connection of the wilderness, two different ideas of wilderness in the text, and one that Jesus selects for himself, and then the other one that the Spirit takes him to. So I think that's important. And then the other side of this, the other side that's interesting, and I read the reason why I read the Marcus version is that you get the sense of Peter and the disciples. It says the word is kind of like hunting him down, like they're like desperate to figure out where Jesus is, and they want to they want to let him know that everybody's looking for him. Um, Thomas Keating has a uh, Thomas Keating has a talk. I think it's a talk that he gives where he talks about this scene with Peter where Peter comes, and the kind of the idea that he lays out, which I think is probably right, is that Peter actually, oddly enough, just like the transfiguration scene we saw a couple weeks ago, Peter, um, something amazing is happening, and Peter wants to settle down. Peter wants to find Jesus, tell Jesus that everyone is excited about what he's doing. So let's bank our base camp here. Everybody's really excited about it. Let's keep it centered right here. And so that and Jesus immediately says, that's not my purpose. That's not why I came forward. I didn't come forward. I didn't come out and come into this land and come into this earth, or whatever you want to read it. I didn't come just to, get some fame and be popular and stay in this one place. I have, I have a commission. I have work to do. I have to go out into all the land and preach and exorcise demons. And again, I I don't have all of the notes attached to it, but Dr. Blunt in his book Go Preach makes a really good case for so much of what Jesus is doing with the preaching, the healing, the exercising, the calling of disciples, all is wrapped up in this idea of preaching and teaching that Jesus is doing. So it's not just going out and saying some nice things. It's all of these things wrapped up together, and so we see that dilemma. Um, that dilemma that Jesus has of whether to follow along with what the crowd is kind of asking of him, or to do what he knows he was called to do. Then, of course, it says that he goes out into all of the region of Galilee and goes into their synagogues and preaches and teaches. Um, uh, Eugene Boring has a quote about Jesus making this decision and not sticking with not staying in Peter's hometown. He says, but Jesus is not a great man, um, so to speak, or who will bask in the favor of those who have marveled at his achievements. He is the proclaimer and agent of the kingdom of God, and he knows that the miracles point beyond themselves to the universal reign of God that is dawning. So what Jesus is about is something beyond just himself, right? I'm reminded of um, shoot, I'm forgetting his name, and that's sad. Uh, he's the preaching and worship professor at Union Seminary now. Oh shoot, Voles, right? Yeah, Richard Voles. He says he has a comment in his book about preaching is teaching, saying that that Jesus didn't preach Jesus. Jesus talked about the kingdom of God, And I think this is, again, this is another example of that Jesus is about the kingdom work. Thanks, Marcy. I finally caught it. It just took me a minute. Yeah. um, but yeah, so yeah, I think that's important to remember, that Jesus is about this bigger mission. And the only other word I'll just highlight real quickly is, you know there's kind of an awkward wording there, that this is not why I came forward. Um, uh, Marcus suggests that this word about this word, and that's not why I came forward, which you can also find in other parts of the text, but we won't get into that. But it is the word, why, um, the when it talks in 10:45 about the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to be servant of all, and to give his life a ransom for many. It's the same, that same context of serving, and coming forth, is the same language in 10:45. But Marcus says it could also be related to kind of a military term. And we see at the end of this text, Jesus preaching and exorcising demons. And we see that there is a strong kind of sense of battle, of encounter, in all of these texts. So I think that's maybe not too far off the course, to think of it in those terms. Um, yeah, and so what I really wanted to kind of to hone in on is the idea of solitude, with Jesus going out to pray, and this idea of different ways of understanding solitude and what it might mean for us. I actually was thinking about this a lot earlier well, actually last year, about this time, as we were all kind of sent to shelter in place, and to be socially distanced and all of that. I was thinking a lot about, how do we use this kind of thing that's been forced on us as a way to actually practice, um, the kind of solitude that is recommended for us. And I just pulled out pulled out a couple quotes that I think will be helpful, but I'm really worried that it's going to cause me some problems about how to display them. So that's the part that I'm worried about. But I'm going to try it anyway, and, and see what happens. That's the best I can do at this point. Um, uh, what the problem is that my computer wants to give me the presentation mode, and I don't like that. Oh boy, I knew I should have tried to get this. Well, anyway, I don't know. We will just let me just read this for you, and I won't be able to get the slide up, but we'll have to do it this way. um, so this is from Henry Nouwen, and it's a quote that he has in his book called "The Way of the Heart," which is kind of looking at the Desert Fathers and mothers, and pulling out some key concepts. And let me read that for you. It says, "Solitude is the furnace of transformation. Without solitude, we remain victims of our society and continue to be entangled in the illusions of the false self. Solitude is the place of the great struggle and the great encounter, the struggle against the compulsions of the false self and the encounter with the loving God who offers God's self as the substance of the new self. So if you're not familiar with that, false self, new self kind of language that comes from Merton, you know, these the mystical kind of writers and Nowen and Merton and Richard Rohr uses this a lot, and other folks, this idea that we have kind of a socialized self. We have a self that kind of can make it through through this world in a certain way, and kind of be okay, but it's not our true self. It's not the part of us that resonates with God. It's not the new creation that Christ is calling out of us. It's something else. And actually, this quote is a frame around a conversation about the three temptations in the wilderness as well, which we could have gone back to as well. But so I think this idea of wilderness, this idea of solitude, um, and this idea of solitude being a place that you have to return to and you have to go to, in a way to move away from a false sense of self, to get closer to your true self. Jesus goes into into the wilderness to um, you know encounter the thing which is outside of us. It's not just us, it's the divine that is trying to speak and live through us. And we see with Peter coming that there is a whole crowd of people, a whole, everyone is trying to draw him into something else. You know, just as Satan did in the desert, everyone is trying to draw him into something else. There's good work that can be done. Clearly, he can do good work, but it's not what God is calling him to in Jesus' true self. So I think there's that. There's a way that we have to figure out how to continue to get beyond our own mind, our own patterns, our own traditions, our own socialization, whatever it may be, and get to that place where where we're encountering God, uh, in the wilderness. Um, and this is the thing. I think this is the part that's really tricky because, uh, especially this past season when we were kind of in this uh, enforced wilderness, and to a certain extent, this enforced solitude with a lot of injustice, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of death, everything going on around us, and for some people, depression and desperation and worry about economic situations and housing and all of these things. And so it's not just, um, it's not always just a rosy thing. I mean, the Jesus being taken out into the desert to be tried and tested, is not, just all good news. There's a lot of, uh, well, I mean, there's fasting and denial and self-sacrifice and that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's it. It's tough, and what I where I really went this week to think about this more was, Gustavo Gutierrez, "We Drink from Our Own Wells." His last chapter before the conclusion, um, is is called, is called Community Out of Solitude. Um, and what he really, and of course, I mean, Gutierrez is a good person to look to because he never shies away from the hard truths of reality. He doesn't just, I mean, there's a vast difference between, um, I think now, and talks about there's a vast, privacy, building a fence and having some me time, you know, out somewhere, away from the hustle and bustle, is different than an intentionally sought solitude that um, is part of a process of moving back and forth, of engagement and reflection, of engagement with like the harshest, truths of the world, eyes wide open, like Jesus in the scene before, seeing all of these masses of people being brought who need hope and healing, and offering that. But that is needs to be combined with, this centering of self and this finding of solitude. And I want to read the way that Gutierrez talks about this solitude. He says, "Being alone with God, who enriches us with a gift of joy in the innermost depths of our being, is an ineffable, largely incommunicatable experience, but it is what all the saints talk about as fundamental." So there is this sense that if we, this has been something I've been thinking about a lot, because we in the church struggle so often to find really meaningful ways to do the work of justice, and to bring shalom, and to be, um, truly with, and on the side of the poor, truly people who heal, and work, and try to bring about the kingdom that God is calling us to do, to be a part of. And I think, part of it is, like there's just maybe an unwillingness. Part of it is an ignorance. Part of it is some other things. But part of it is that we are not actually tapping into the the source that that compels us to do the work. We're not. We have mental understandings of maybe what we read in the Bible and what we think Jesus might be calling us to do. And it's very convenient if it fits nicely into kind of, what we want to do anyway. But the actual, you know, connection and kind of just grace-filled moment of being in the presence of God, and knowing that, as Gutierrez says, this ineffable, joyous connection with God, um, is something we can't necessarily talk about, but it compels us out to preach and to heal and to cast out, the things that are harming God's people. Um, and if we're not in that pattern of connection and contemplation and solitude, and then back out for, for healing and that sort of thing, then we end up on either side. We end up, being kind of in a pietistic, private kind of way of viewing our faith, that doesn't address the true needs of the world, um, or we end up being kind of out, working and running and everything, but there's not, um, but it's hollow in some way, and it doesn't quite work. Yeah, I mean, Gutierrez talks about our energies be poured out in scattered commitment and unmitigated activism. Just that there's there's something that doesn't quite make the full connection. But and I want to and I think this is what we can, I mean, these two texts from last week and this week, I mean, there's something so profound about what Jesus is showing is, the utmost compassion and hospitality to people coming to him for healing, but also the the return again to the source of that compassion, the return again to the source of of the fire that makes him be able to do that. And this is, I think, I mean, this is especially true. Jesus is dealing with, you know, I mean, Jesus is in a sense in a place where people are, completely oppressed. There's the religious leaders who are, shaming and stealing and all sorts of things, and then there's the empire on top of that. I mean, it's a hopeless situation in so many ways, but Jesus confronts that head on. I think about. I was just watching something today about the evictions that are the evictions that are still happening even though there's a moratorium. There was a woman I was watching, is a part of this movement in Philadelphia that is going in and taking over houses that are just sitting there. They have the water on and the electric on because they don't want the pipes to freeze. But they're not rented. They're not, they're just there, and people are coming in and taking them over because, you know, people are in a desperate situation. You know, so yeah, I mean, I think this is the kind of place that this is the kind of thing that Jesus was dealing with. This you've got to understand how. I mean, it's hard to get your head around how desperate people must have been, um, for a salvation that was real. Not like salvation on the ground, real, tangible, things. and so here, this quote. I'm going to just read this other quote from Gutierrez. It talks about these encounters with God in solitude. All these encounters, in all these encounters, there's a new encounter with oneself, and above all, a new face-to-face encounter with the Lord, who is testing and consoling us. John of the Cross speaks of the fateful night through which one must pass. But he also says, the desert is more delightful, savorous, and loving, the deeper and vaster and more solitary it is. Um, such, such is the twofold experience of the Christian who wishes to be faithful to the Lord, even in the depths of the dark night of injustice. I think that, um, which is a play on the dark night of the soul, which is the text by John on the Cross. But I think, um, yeah, there's something here. There's something here about how we who seek to do, the peacemaking work, seek to bring justice and wholeness, and liberation, all of those things. Um, how we have to find a way to make the time and the space for the solitary engagement with the actual um, the actual spirit that's compelling all of this stuff, even if we don't realize it sometimes. That's the key. And I think that Jesus is understanding of this and committed to this should be a helpful reminder that we should be even more um, engaged in that sort of thing. Um, and so then of course in the Gutierrez book he talks about communion out of solitude. So how not only do we need the solitude to make the connection with, um, you know, make the connection with God, because God is the one that actually is giving us the desires and the hunger, for righteousness and justice and peace. So, but then also in that solitude, in that connection with God, God also sends us out, um, to form community. And so Gutierrez says, the experience of solitude, on the other hand, gives rise to a hunger for communion. There is, um, I typed this wrong. There is an aloneness with oneself and with God that, however hard it may be to endure at certain times, is a requirement for authentic community. So just talking about that back and forth again, how the solitude, being filled up with God's love and God's peace, compels us to go out and to share that, and to keep our sharing and interaction authentic. We have to go back and get connected again, to in solitude to God. Um, yeah, so I think that's the movement, the general movement of these texts from last week and this week. And I think, I mean, I'm trying as best I can to stay committed, to some kind of practice that keeps me, emptying myself, and trying to allow, God to come more fully into my life and into my work. And I think this text is a good reminder. Um, you know, just as a kind of look ahead to this week's lectionary text, I think it's in Mark 8, just that idea of, whoever wants to save their life must lose it. That whole line of thought, and in Mark, I mean, again, it has a lot to do with not only, how you are in public and in your outspoken kind of, words and deeds, but also in your solitude. How, when you it's just you, and it's just God. Are you also trying to give up, trying to let go, um, you know, trying to allow more space for God, in your life? Um, right. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's, yeah. Marcy says, yeah, get behind me. Sometimes we need to, we got to, tell that to some people and tell that to ourselves, often, right? That's for sure. Yeah, I think that's true. Oh, well, anyway, so that was, unfortunately, I wish I would have had a little more time to set up the slideshow and everything to get it right. But, and, I started doing a little cleaning in this room too. I see that I left a bunch of stuff laying out, so, I didn't quite get things tidied up. But thanks for hanging out, everybody. Um, yeah, in a couple weeks, when we start chapter 2, kind of a big, I have I do have a guest coming on, hopefully. Seems to be set up, so I'm looking forward to that. And, if you have a favorite, Mark text in the first few chapters, and you want to come on and chat about it, yeah, send me a message or something, and we'll try to make it work. I'm thinking people are probably getting tired of me just talking all the time. So yeah, uh, look forward to seeing you all next week.